Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Vincent. So Vincent, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
I am based in Seattle, Washington, and I am a fractional CMO to emerging tech companies. Came out of enterprise and am currently working with a lot of startups and SMBs.
So how did you get into being a fractional CMO or being a marketer in general for tech companies?
Well, I came out of an educational background. I was a college professor and an instructional designer. And there's a lot of similarities between education and marketing in that you're really trying to understand the psychology of different audiences and get them to do something in a measurable way, hopefully something you intend, a meaningful measurement. And I started working with tech companies just because I was an early adopter techie. I built some of the first web pages in the world and happened to live in a place that's very rich in tech industry. So T-Mobile USA is based right down the street. I often joke I literally live between Amazon and Microsoft headquarters. And so there's just a lot of tech here. And aside from the giants, there's a lot of really interesting things going on in smaller tech. So that's really what kind of drew me into marketing. I continued carrying on education to refine more of a marketing approach. And that's kind of how I ended up what I'm doing. I think you also asked how did I end up really working with fractionals or in a fractional space. And I guess I kind of always have. I'm one of those people that frequently have 2 or 3, sometimes more jobs at a time in different industries. I just always have. I guess if you want something done, give it to a busy person. And as the market changed and full-time jobs become scarce, I'll just stack up a number of fractional roles to keep myself in the game and keep the skills sharp.
For sure. So in terms of like the kind of companies that you work with, what are some like the best fits? Like what stage should somebody engage a fractional CMO when they're building like a SaaS product or some sort of tech company?
I always say engage on day one. One of the advantages to a fractional is that the financial commitment is very flexible for companies, so it grows as the need grows. The reason I encourage companies to start early is I work with a lot of investment groups and accelerators and incubators also, and what they tell me is they see companies that don't spend enough time on their product market fit when they first start out. And they end up developing a lot of coding or a lot of product development goes in, and they find that particular market niche, they need to pivot. And the less marketing they've done earlier, the more they need to pivot, the more times they're going to pivot, which is expensive and really soul crushing to a lot of startups. They have such a love for, it can be a game or an app or something. And having to pivot and pivot and pivot later on can be really frustrating. And they can be something as small as did they check the trademarks on their product name before they committed a lot of social media and PR and that sort of thing to it, so that they don't suddenly end up with a hefty legal bill. So yeah, or it can just be product market fit. I like to work cross-functionally. So in the beginning, I'm really a generalist. I like to talk to the UX people, the UI people. I like to talk to product development people and say, here's the features the market really wants. And they may not be the features that a company really loves at that moment. So it's a matter of just kind of weighing things to get the biggest bang for their buck.
For sure. So in terms of finding product market fit, I think that you bring up a good point because, many tech founders, especially if they're have like a development background, are very feature focused and feature heavy, and they're not thinking about the actual validation of the business idea. So how do you kind of help technical founders like find that business side of things?
A lot of it, I work with a lot of pitch decks and I go to a lot of investor meetings. And because I'm not a founder myself and I'm not trying to get money, founders or investors will talk to me in a way they often don't really talk to founders. And a lot of the TAM, the SAM, the big market projections, investors don't believe any of that. It kind of has to be on your deck so that it shows that you've done your research, but they don't look at the billions of dollars and the hockey sticks and all those great graphs that we all put in there. They really want to see like traction. They want to know that you talk to 100 people before they're going to give you a dime to make sure that the product market fit really works. And they want to know data. And so like with a game company, they're very passionate about their game. They have, it's going to be the best game ever. All their friends love the game. They've got some artists working on it. They usually hire a social media person. They've got some buzz and a community. But then all of a sudden we start looking at how much on average does that particular genre of game make in revenue? And is it going to work for their development cost? And a lot of times it's a no. And so it's kind of like going, rather than just saying no, I try to find options. I'm like, so here's a way to be different. Here's something people have not explored. Here's, rather than just specific product market fit, here's the trajectory. Here's the sentiment. There's all these great sentiment analysis tools about, we saw this with blockchain. Everybody hated blockchain at one point, except for a very small number of people. And we found communities would grow to that number and no more, no matter how much money you threw at it. So it's really just a matter of, okay, how do we adjust? How do we pivot so that we can show investors and team members who are investing time, they may be working for equity, there's something more than just passion there. There's a hard, cold business model. I always joke that I was a liberal arts major, and I'm not sure how, but I ended up being like the spreadsheet and algebra guy. And it's, because there's all these really great formulas for how, projections and predictions and forecasts. It just takes a little time to do them and kind of the willingness to do the math.
For sure. And then in terms of from that standpoint, right, I think, obviously finding PMF is very challenging sometimes, but I think also it's like, okay, once you find your place in the market, there's validation. Obviously, you're going to have competition probably to some capacity, right? So in those areas, like how do you, kind of guide people? What do you recommend in terms of how much to actually charge, right? I think that's always the, $1 million question, for lack of a better term, because I think a lot of founders, especially in SaaS, go, I don't know how much to charge. My competitors are charging this much or that much. I think especially like some products are being built and it can be difficult to differentiate themselves, right? So it's like, okay, there's many questions there, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's pricing is always a really difficult one. Is it going to be a subscription model? Is it going to be, how do you, monetize your referrals? And it really I always start out with cost of acquisition just as things stand. And that's generally, you can find those averages, almost anywhere. How much does it cost to get a customer? And everybody says, well, we're going to do social media and we're going to go viral. It's not 1999 anymore. Or 2005 or whatever last time that worked. So it's really, what is that? And then once you kind of have that, you can start tracing what their likely lifetime value is going to be. And then you just start doing a lot of scenarios. Scenario A, you charge this much, you get this many customers. Here's their lifetime value. Here's their churn rate. Scenario B, you do this price. And it takes a long time. People really often hate doing it. It's a lot of time sitting in a room with a whiteboard or a bunch of paper and just running through the numbers. One of the I don't know if it's the secret, but one of the fun things I like to do is look at features and break down cost per feature. How much does it cost to develop those features? And then going back to potential customers and existing customers and ask them which features they actually use. Many, many software solutions, what we find is that their customers are only using 10 to 20% of the total available features available. And so then you figure out, well, of that 10 to 20%, are they the most profitable customers or are they the least profitable customers? Because if you're paying to develop 100% of the available features, whatever that may be, but your customers are only using, say, an average of 15%, you're prepping the market, you're warming, you're educating, you're raising awareness. And all a competitor has to do is come in with a product focused on that 15%. They're going to come in at much lower development cost. You've already warmed the market for them, and they're just going to slice into you like butter. So that's kind of like not fun. It's an interesting, insightful way to look at, what to develop, when to develop. Timothy Ferriss wrote it like he fired some percentage of his customers. He's a big life hacker. And he said he fired them, which firing customers was unusual at that time period, because they were costing more than they were bringing in when it came to customer support and other things. They were actually net negatives. And he found that by just devoting everyone towards low friction customers, all of a sudden his profits just shot up. And his employees were generally happier because they didn't have angry customer service.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's easier said than done. But yeah, I mean, I think that's good advice. Exactly. I think that there's going to be always certain customers, and, especially if you have like a freemium model, sometimes, that can be a challenge. 'Cause sometimes those free customers might be the biggest pain in your rear end. So it's like, how do you really, figure out, like, do you even offer that, right? And if you do, like, for how long? And that just to your point, that there's so many nuances of understanding who you're dealing with and how they're going to engage and what their expectations are based on how much they pay.
And that's going to change at each phase of a company's growth. When you're first starting out, a lot of times you just need any customers to show investors you have traction, to create positive PR. But that may not always be the case. You may need to adjust that. And that can be, there's opportunities there to keep those customers, but maybe shift them to a lower tier and then move your higher profit tiers. Loyalty rewards work really well. And that's, going back to that lifetime value. If they're a high referral customer, that one customer may be not a very exciting account, but they got you 5 referrals who are amazing customers. Then you have to remember that they're a rainmaker and you want to keep those.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we have clients like that too that are, top clients, not just even, just consistency, but I think just the fact that, like, they're always more than happy to go to bat on our behalf, take phone calls, things like that, which, like, that's huge. They've helped us grow exponentially. So to me, it's not even about, how much they're paying. I think it's also, just to your point, Vincent, is like that you have people that are big fans of you and big fans of your product or service or both, and can go to bat for you anytime.
Yeah, the evangelist is your most powerful sales tool. The advocate is the one who takes the time to do the case studies, who shares their data. That's when you think of that as a marketing effort and you're able to assign that an attribution number, all of a sudden that customer's real value is much more demonstrable. And you can take that kind of up the chain or to a client and say, these people are really swinging above their weight. We just didn't know it until now.
For sure. And obviously that you mentioned that you work with some different verticals, like whether it's games or like SaaS. What are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing here in 2025?
I'm seeing a lot more fractional work. There's a lot more companies that are, especially in marketing, that's an area where they're really excited to do that fractional because it's flexible and they can see where they're growing to, and they may want somebody they can convert to full time. Or they may say, hey, we really just need this much and we want you to build out our team kind of underneath. And that's great. The other thing I think that we're seeing with fractionals all across CTOs, CROs, because they're working with multiple companies, the reflex, I find for myself anyway, the reflex is to start strategic partnerships. At least, I don't want to say half, but a noticeable percentage of my work is introducing companies to other companies and going, oh, you need a software solution. These people are building that and they need a customer so they can do a case study. Why don't you guys work together? It's mutually beneficial. Doesn't cost anybody anything. That kind of win-win.
For sure. No, and that's definitely exciting. I guess, like, what are you seeing now in the world of AI? It's always like the big question. I think it's evolving and it's always changing. I mean, obviously, a couple of years ago, it was sort of like a buzzword, but there's still lots of merit, even more merit within AI. So I guess, like, what are you seeing in that department?
We're the hype is the gloss is wearing off a little bit. In the beginning, generative AI was kind of the thing. Hey, we can send out more sales letters faster than ever before to all your clients. The problem was the sales letters weren't very good. Or you can generate art without hiring graphic designers. And it was so exciting to type, like, I want a frog wearing a cowboy hat, and to see a frog wearing a cowboy hat. But then you start thinking, but is that the frog I wanted? And is that the cowboy hat I wanted? It was just so exciting to see something happen that now we're really getting back to, but is that useful? Does it pay for itself? Where I think the real exciting effort's going to be is what we used to consider really boring in data analysis is, can we predict? And this is great in marketing because, rather than sending out large campaigns and then getting, your 3 to 5 click-through percent, or, how many conversions, it's fractional, and really just being able to go, oh, well, let's just ignore the 95% of people who don't care, or to invest in them to that proportion because they don't really want to hear you anyway. And sending them more emails like, hey, just bumping this up in your email. Nobody's ever sold anything by bumping it up. If I can proselytize one thing, it's like, everyone please stop bumping up in my email box. But
Yeah.
but really just going, okay, they bought this, they're X% more likely to buy this thing or to upsell or cross sell, and they want it, or knowing when they want something.
Right.
They just got a huge investment. They have a wish list, but they need somebody to come in and tell them, hey, here's the order in which to do it. Don't just go randomly spending money, but here's how to, which software solutions you need. And being able to pull in this huge amount of data. Google Vertex AI, they have, and their different APIs, they have data sets already built. So you don't even have to have your own data. All these giant data aggregators that we've all been afraid of for a couple decades now, they're willing to share a lot of that data. And so you can go, oh, my customers really want to buy this in February, so only advertise in February. It really kind of cuts down to, and yeah, you're going to miss out on an opportunity here and there, but when you really run the numbers, you're going to come out ahead. So I think that data analysis is my top excitement on AI right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think, it's one thing that's interesting. It's like we're big in e-commerce and, people are like, oh yeah, I'm making all these AI ads, but they really don't perform as well as actual humans because, we're intelligent enough to tell the difference. And maybe at first it's kind of, as you said, a gag, it's exciting, but, once you really get into like the nitty gritty, sure, there's some exceptions, but for the most part, it's just not going to perform as well as humans, and people can tell the difference. And when you keep seeing the same person in the same, location, the same thing, doing other, all these things for different brands. As an example, you can say, okay, like it's an AI video. It's just, yeah. So there definitely is, I think, to your point, Vincent, kind of like a pushback to like, okay, AI is great, but what about that human touch, which is still very important.
And I think there was that excitement, we can get rid of humans and just have AI do all this stuff. And nobody likes that approach, one, but also it's, I think, a really counterproductive approach, because AI assisted work, having AI do all the background stuff that nobody really wants to do. I shouldn't say nobody really wants to do. There's a lot of data analysis and data scientists who get very excited about things that maybe the rest of us find a little more of an uphill battle. And like data analysis is, for me, since I know what questions to ask or what I'm looking for, being able to talk to AI and have it do the stuff in the background, but then also knowing just enough that I can tell if it's right, if it's hitting the mark, because there's nothing worse than, just setting it and forgetting it with AI is just a bad option.
Yeah, exactly. It's important to kind of mix those things and intertwine them. So obviously, like we're still in Q1 of 2025. So what are some of the biggest goals for you and your business for this year?
A lot of my goals are overlapped with some of my client goals. I really want to see them, get their products, get that traction underneath. Last year, we were much more excited about pitch decks and getting investors and doing presentations. And once that traction started to kind of get some traction, in late 2024, now a lot of us, we're holding back a little bit and thinking, well, let's see how far we can get without investment, rather than giving away chunks of the company or saddling ourselves with unrealistic expectations. Because investors always want that hockey stick and they want the big numbers, and there's that urge to make them happy, even when on a gut level, since we're right here with the company, we might know it's not the right choice. So I think the trend I'm seeing in the goals I have is to stay granular, stay hands-on, keep the sleeves rolled up at all times, and yes, integrate AI. I think it's an amazing tool, but don't take the hands off the wheel and give over that control to anybody. I think at this point there's still so much potential before we give away control to a tool. So that's kind of one of the goals I have, is to keep proselytizing AI. I think it's great, but in a sensible way. I personally take probably about an hour of training a day on various sources through like Google or different. What is AI? What does it really do? I try to do no code things just because I'm a terrible coder, but knowing enough that when I ask AI to code something for me, like a little marketing widget, if it does break, at least I know what went wrong. I may not know how to fix it, but so that's a personal goal, is just to keep that lifelong learning going. Because I think since technology is changing so fast, a threat for all of us is that we can become outdated very, very quickly, and it's just going to get faster. And
For sure.
being able to generate an answer with AI it might push us into a place where we're not able to carry through on our promise. And so,
Yeah, exactly. So if you could go back in time to before you got started in your marketing career, what is the biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
I would have encouraged my younger self to get into data analytics earlier. I was not a great lover of math, and I kept going out, marketing's creative. I want to be a madman like on TV. But really integrating, not just doing exclusively data, but integrating that would have been something, because every job now says data driven, which I wish. I don't like that term just because it's become kind of an excuse. Nobody really, a lot of the more they say it, the less they often mean it. And so I really want to see like data informed or data inspired.
Yeah, exactly.
What
Yeah,
are we going
yeah.
to do with that data?
Yeah, data is very, very important. And but yeah, exactly. Like the verbiage could definitely be changed as time kind of gets old. So I guess like on that note, right? Like if somebody's watching this and if they wanted to work with you or wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for somebody to get in contact?
Almost exclusively use LinkedIn. I think everybody does now. AI, one of the downsides is I get probably 6 emails a day from non-existent companies, and fake people. And so since LinkedIn has the verified accounts, and you can also click about, and you can see the age of the account and how many connections they have. I always say, like, please contact me on LinkedIn. And if they don't, then I kind of figure I've sorted that out.
Awesome. Well, yeah, if somebody's interested in fractional marketing, if you're a tech company, SaaS or otherwise, feel free to reach out to Vincent, Vincent Kovar on LinkedIn. And yeah, Vincent, thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Of course.